history remembers Anne Boleyn as the doomed second wife of King Henry VIII, a queen who rose higher than any woman in England and fell further than anyone could imagine. We are often told she was executed quickly, that her punishment was swift, clean, almost merciful. But the truth, the real truth, is far darker. Because what happened during Anne Boleyn's final days, what was done to her reputation, her dignity, her legacy, was far worse than the blade that ended her life. Today, you will hear the story the way England tried to hide it. Anne Boleyn entered Henry's court not as a temptress, but as an educated, sharp-minded lady-in-waiting. She spoke French, understood politics, and carried herself with confidence that unsettled many noble women. Henry VIII was immediately captivated, but Anne refused to be just another mistress. She demanded marriage, a crown, a future. And Henry, obsessed, desperate, changed the entire country for her. He broke from the Pope. He created the Church of England. He overturned centuries of religious authority, all for Anne. But a crown gained through chaos is a crown heavy with enemies. Anne's coronation in 1533 should have been a triumph. Instead, crowds whispered. Nobles frowned. The public stayed away. Anne was blamed for England's split with Rome. She was called the concubine queen, and some believed her marriage cursed. Yet Henry's love blinded him, until Anne failed to do what the king demanded most: produce a male heir. After repeated miscarriages and constant political pressure, Henry's affection cooled. Anne's enemies sensed weakness, and Thomas Cromwell, once her ally, began plotting, not against her ideas, but against her life. Cromwell quietly built a case. He questioned servants in locked rooms. He intercepted letters. He used spies. He took casual jokes, harmless gestures, everyday conversations, and twisted them into something darker. He needed Anne removed, and the king was growing impatient. The charges were shocking: adultery, treason, and even incest. None were proven. All were politically useful. Anne was arrested during a May Day tournament, a public humiliation designed to send a message. She was taken to the Tower of London, to the same room where she had once stayed the night before her coronation. Now, it was her prison. Anne's final days were filled with fear and confusion. She begged to see the evidence. There was none. She asked to confront the witnesses. She was denied. But the worst part, worse than the fear of death, was how people in power stripped her of dignity. Her ladies-in-waiting were ordered to spy on her. Every tear, every prayer, every moment of weakness was reported to Cromwell. Anne was mocked in secret, studied like an object, her privacy stolen long before her life. Henry VIII refused to see her. He cut her off emotionally before he cut her off politically. Anne was isolated, forgotten, and deliberately broken. Her trial at Westminster Hall was a spectacle. Over 2,000 people attended, not to seek justice, but to witness a political performance. Anne defended herself brilliantly. She dismantled the accusations. She showed calm logic. She reminded the court that the king himself had once sworn eternal love for her. But the jury had already decided. Nobles who hated her, men who owed Cromwell favors, enemies she had made by speaking too boldly. At the very moment Anne delivered her defense, the scaffold for her execution was already being constructed. She was found guilty of treason against the man who had torn nations apart to marry her. People often say Henry VIII was merciful because he ordered Anne's execution by sword instead of axe. But this mercy came with a terrible price. First, Anne had to wait, day after day, alone, unsure of when the executioner would arrive. Some nights she was told it would be tomorrow. Then the next morning, the date was changed again, then again. This psychological torture was far crueler than a clean death. She was not allowed comfort, not allowed to see her daughter Elizabeth, not allowed to speak to her family alone. Henry even celebrated with another woman, Jane Seymour, while Anne waited for death in a cold tower room. On May 19th, 1536, Anne Boleyn was led from her chamber to a private scaffold inside the tower grounds. Witnesses described her as calm, not because she felt peace, but because every sign of fear would be mocked and recorded by her enemies. She gave a short speech, carefully avoiding any criticism of the king. Knowing her daughter Elizabeth's future depended on her restraint. And then came the final cruelty. Anne was ordered to kneel upright, without a block, and hold her head high. The French executioner stood behind her, silently preparing his blade. He called out to distract her, a trick of the trade, so she wouldn't panic. In less than a second, the sword fell. Anne Boleyn's life ended quietly, but her punishment did not. What happened after her death was the real injustice. Her body was placed in a simple arrow chest, because no coffin had been prepared. Even in death, she was denied dignity. Henry married Jane Seymour just 11 days later. Anne's enemies rewrote history, painting her as manipulative, dangerous, unworthy, a witch, a seductress, a traitor. For centuries, children learned lies about her. Her reputation was executed along with her body. Yet today, historians know the truth. Anne was innocent, a victim of political fear, religious upheaval, and a king desperate for a son. And her daughter, Elizabeth, went on to become one of the greatest monarchs in English history. In the end, Anne Boleyn won a legacy far stronger than the men who destroyed her. Anne Boleyn's story is not just about a queen who died. It is about a woman silenced, humiliated, and stripped of dignity long before her execution. Her punishment was not the sword. It was the lies, the betrayal, the isolation, and the centuries of character assassination that followed. But today, the truth is finally reclaiming her name. If you want more untold stories from history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.